And good evening, and welcome once again to another edition of the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And it's Monday night, and I wasn't really sure if I was going to be up to this, but here I am anyway. So it's time for another installment of New Comics, bitches! Okay, so let's just jump right in because I don't really have anything to say prior to our little confab here today. So let's just jump right in, like I normally say that we should do. So, oh, okay, I do have one thing to say. Yes, this lighting is for effect. I'm backlit because it's the Shadow Gallery. I got that question on my last video, on the Dark Knight Returns review video. So, anyway, so we start, as we normally do, with Marvel. We're going to start with Superior Spider-Man #2, because I know that none of you are reading it. Okay, some of you are reading it, but a lot of you aren't, and I get it. And this issue is kind of it has turned me, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. It hasn't turned me against it, because I think this issue has as many things working for it as against it, but surprisingly enough, the things that are working for it are strong enough to actually keep me invested here. But we'll just see. I mean, basically, the whole conceit of this issue, as you see from the cover, for those of you who saw the cover as you walked past it in spite at your LCSs, you see a big cover of Spidey kissing Mary Jane, and Mary Jane looking all surprised. Oh my god, I'm getting kissed by Spider-Man. Well, basically, that's kind of what this whole issue seems to be leading up to, is that basically, is Octo Spidey finally going to put the moves, the real moves, on Mary Jane? And we have what was introduced in the first issue, which is something that I have am both kind of liking and not liking this decision. I'm really of two minds about it, as I talked about in my review of the first issue, is that Peter's spirit is now constantly hanging around this book, constantly hanging around Octo Spidey. So that in and of itself is a device that allows the fans of Peter Parker to keep reading and seeing Peter Parker, but it's just not seeing him as Spider-Man. They're seeing him as a spirit, a totally disembodied voice that is not heard by anybody, including Otto, but is only heard by us, by the readers. And basically what we got here, it's all Crazy Town Banana Pants. As Spirit Peter watches Otto again try to make some time with Mary Jane, and with of course Otto's memories of what they've done together, the kind of things that she likes to do, he's certain that he's on his way to sealing the deal. And this is all, also kind of explained via Mary Jane, as Mary Jane has Carly actually living with her temporarily, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but hey, whatever. And she says that her and Peter might be getting back together. But after all these different dates that he takes her out on, all Petey gets is a peck on the cheek and nothing else. And this, of course, is leading Otto to feel very emaciated, if you will. But what he realizes, of course, much to Spidey's chagrin, is that he doesn't actually have to have, in the biblical sense, Mary Jane, as long as he has access to Peter's memories. And of course, Peter's memories they do have memories of, all that. So he uses that to his benefit, and it definitely has a creep factor attached to it of about a good 8 out of 10, especially in that particular moment of this book. But basically what we have here is that, we also have, Octo Spidey creating these little spider bots that he's putting all over the city, and he puts basically an application on his whatever iPad or whatever kind of nonsense that they would want to call an iPad in the Marvel Universe, because they can't call it an iPad. That can kind of patrol the city, kind of look out and see where crime is going on, again, in his efforts to be a superior Spider-Man. And then we get, basically, because Mary Jane, she's put her nightclub at an old hideout of Adrian Toomes'. And all of a sudden she is under attack by goons of his, all sporting wings, and they're really weirdly drawn. They look like goons. I mean, it's not like just like, in the the Vulture arc that happened before Superior Spider-Man and everything like that. Not just people that are wearing the gear and so on and so forth and stealing stuff for Adrian Toomes, but these seem to be like almost unnatural, the way that Ryan Stegman draws them. And I will say his art is terrific. I like it much more than Humberto Ramos. It has, if you will, almost kind of a McFarlane-ish or Capullo-ish kind of vibe to it, which I do enjoy. But anyway, so we have Octo Spidey running to save the day and to save Mary Jane, and of course we have that moment, the moment in which Mary Jane is being thrown out of the window and potentially plummeting to her death. But, it's the moment, does Spidey shoot the web line that will potentially cause another Gwen Stacy moment, or will he shoot a web net? And of course, Peter is, kind of screaming to himself, if you will, shoot the web net. And of course he does, saves Mary Jane, but here, of course, is where the worm turns, in the sense that Mary Jane feels like, okay, I'm in love with this guy again, and I want to have some happy time with him. And this is, of course, where Otto says, no, I can't do this. Conscience time, basically. And he says, you love me both as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. One of these people is always going to put you in danger. So the best way that we can deal with this is just, the best way that I can keep you safe is to end this. And in the meantime, we have these moments with Carly where she's remembering pre-Superior how when Ock broke into the evidence locker at the NYPD, how he said, "I'm really Peter," as Ock. And she's looking into this is definitely something she wants to look into. Of course, we have Otto, again, you know, as Peter kind of puts it, being kind of a pervy old man at certain points, you know, even kind of hitting on Sajani, you know, one of the fellow co-workers at Horizon after this whole kind of not working out with MJ. I mean, before the actual saying no, I can't do this. This is after the whole kind of memory thing that Ock goes through. Like I said, I like and dislike where this book is going. I like the fact that Peter is there, but I don't like the fact that he's there, you know? I mean, if you're going to change the status quo, live up to that. And I was kind of thinking that this would be something that would be kind of sidelined, but it seems to be a really big device that Slott is pulling out here. And I don't know how well it's working. Like I said, there are parts of it that I do think that do work well. As Peter's kind of observing all of the kind of craziness that abounds when Ock is being Spidey and he's getting his hand shaken by J. Jonah Jameson of all people, just all this weird stuff. And it's nice to have Peter's voice there, but at sometimes it feels just off. It feels like they should let Peter kind of disappear for a while so that we can just focus on Ock being Ock Spidey. So I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to tell where this book is going. I'm going to keep giving it a chance. But if it keeps continuing down this road, this may not have my interest for much longer. Because, like I said, I mean, the whole thing about shaking it up and, defying the status quo is to at least do it for a little while. And I know that it is, but it's also at the same time not. It's kind of a wimpy move on Marvel's part. So I have to say it's about a 3.5 out of 5. I mean, it's not bad. It's not it's certainly not great, but it's decent enough for me to say, I'll run with this for a little while until, unless it really starts getting on my nerves. So that's my thing. Avengers number 4. So this is the first issue post the really terrific 3-issue opening arc of Hickman and, Jerome Opeña's Avengers, but now we have Adam Kubert on art. How long? I don't know if he's guesting. I don't know if he's staying. I have no idea. This is one of these things where I almost kind of wish I read previews so that I could get a better feel of who's going to be, if he is just guesting, because I don't really care for Adam Kubert's work in this book. I just don't. And that's only one of its kind of downsides, because the other big downside is that it follows up this terrific arc by focusing on Hyperion, who I know there are fans out there of Squadron Supreme, and they really dig that stuff. I was not a huge fan of Squadron Supreme at all. So this, to me, it's kind of a one-off about, very much about his character, and it has, a very traditional, kind of the patented Hickman kind of, disjointed narrative that he likes to throw into a lot of his books. It works very well in Manhattan Projects, does not work well for the Avengers, because I appreciate the fact that it seems like he's taking the time to do kind of one-offs about the less familiar characters that we don't really know that well, but at the same time, this is the Avengers. I need to feel like we're really focusing on the Avengers. Which is one of the reasons that I stopped reading Bendis's Avengers after a while, is because it just seemed to be spread all over the fucking place because there were so many Avengers, and I think that Hickman might be falling into that same trap here. But we'll see. I mean, I didn't like this issue. You know, I mean, basically, you know, it has to do with, basically, this seems like something it seems like almost too big of a thing to have missed, or just to kind of introduce offhandedly in this issue. Basically, AIM has their own island, which has basically been recognized by the UN as kind of their own sovereign state, which I think is just fucking bizarre. I don't know why, basically a terrorist organization would be into, why they would have kind of their own sovereign state that would have recognition under the United Nations. But, this is comic book world. Obviously anything can happen, and it usually does. So just by focusing on Hyperion, it just really lost a lot of my interest there. And, Adam Kubert's artwork is not very good. The ideas, of course, that Hickman uses and the character work that he does is really good. It's solid. But to me, to kind of waste this much time and, invest this much time into a particular character that I don't really care about, is kind of a wasted issue for me. So I gave this a 2.5 out of 5. Yes, I'll continue to read it, and yes, I really hope that it picks back up, that it gets back the momentum, because this sort of killed that momentum for me, this issue. It's like it started off bang, 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 we're into some really cool shit right now, and all of a sudden it's like... I mean, that's just what it felt like. It just felt like screeching to a halt. So I believe that the next issue is actually going to focus on, again, another kind of non-Avengers player that I don't know anything about, and again, might not really care about. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, I have enough faith in Hickman that he'll either bring this back around, or this will get too FF-y, and then I'll lose interest. So, Hawkeye number 7. I'll tell you what, I would have absolutely put this definitely in my picks of the week if it had not been for one person. And that one person is Jesse Ham, who is the co-artist on this issue. I get it. Because basically what's going on here is this is the, not the big issue, but I mean it's certainly a very important issue because it is dealing with Superstorm Sandy. And if memory serves, all the proceeds, all the profits from made from this book are going to Sandy-based relief efforts. Which of course is a huge thing for Fraction to do. It's just a really cool thing for him to do, and to get the people at Marvel to sign off on. But basically what we have here is we have this kind of dual narrative structure. Well, not again, because this is really not a device that Fraction's used yet in Hawkeye, and probably will not be something that he'll use very often, but we have Clint and Kate, Clint in New York and Kate in New Jersey, as Sandy falls all about them. And we have HAWKEYE, Clint. His segment is done by Steve Lieber, who, if you don't know, at least to me, I know him best on his work on Greg Rucka's fantastic Whiteout, which I actually just reread over the weekend because it's like reading this issue and looking at Lieber's artwork made me kind of want to reread that because I love his stuff. And I haven't seen a whole lot of his stuff lately. So, and he's helping Grills, one of his neighbors, to kind of goes to Far Rockaway, which we do. It's interesting because sometimes this book does turn into a little bit of a travelogue of New York City, a little bit. Because I mean, we clearly see that Clint is not, you know, he's not living the high life in Avengers Tower or anything like that. He's living in this, you know, like this 20-story walk up in, you know, in Manhattan, and that's just his place. That's a place for a guy like Clint. And again, this is definitely not a superhero story. It's just more focusing on the hero aspect of not just these two characters, but of the people around them and how people do come together in the face of crisis. This is kind of how I would have, if you think back to, obviously many years ago, if you think back to the quote-unquote the black issue of Amazing Spider-Man that Straczynski and Romita did, that dealt with 9/11, obviously, this is nothing, you know, this is apples and oranges, I know that. But I would have preferred a book like this come out about that and about, you know, kind of bad things happening and then, but good people kind of coming together, as opposed to seeing moments of, you know, Dr. Doom crying. You know, I mean, it's like, come on. You know, it's a guy who actually airlifted the entire city and, you know, and was willing to drop it, you know, if you know, no, if everybody didn't acquiesce to his demands. So that's just one of those things that just really sticks out in my mind. It's why I really hated Straczynski's run on Amazing Spider-Man. So, but anyway, so we have you know, Clint and Grills' father, you know, trying to you know, get, you know, it's basically, you know, just kind of, you have like your kind of, you know, how you have some of your Superstorm hysterics, and then you have the people that just kind of don't give a crap. It's, you know, and that's a very moving segment of this book, and I really, really enjoyed reading this. And then we have Jessie Hamm does the artwork on Kate's story, and she's going to this, you know, lavish wedding in New Jersey. A very famous old hotel there that, you know, has withstood this and that and the other thing. But of course, here comes Sandy. Boom, the power's out. You know, there are people at the wedding that need, you know, one of them, you know, needs medication, and so Kate splits and heads to the nearest drugstore. But of course, looters have gotten there before her, and she tries to go into action, but she kind of gets blindsided by a can of beans. But there are the good people of New Jersey out there who have kind of captured the looters and you know, kind of help her get the medicine back to where she needs to get it to. And so you get this, you know, it's still, I mean, you know, Fraction writes some tremendous stuff, some really funny stuff, some really poignant stuff. Again, it's a really, really well told story, but Jessie Hamm's art is just so, it's just way too scratchy, and it doesn't fit any of the aesthetic that this book has set for itself with, you know, with people like Dave Aja, with people like Javier Pulido, with people that we will eventually get like Francesco Francavilla. You know, these are all people that have similar artistic storytelling devices that they use. And Jessie Hamm just sticks out like a huge fucking sore thumb. And it does hurt this book. And it's sad to say, but it's true. I mean, the book ultimately, you know, it's one of those kind of renewing your faith in humanity types of things, which is exactly the type of thing that something like Sandy, that kind of story, needed. But I just wish that they had chosen a different artist for Kate's story, because while there are some moments that are, there are some panels that look really nice, most of them look really bad. And like I said, it does hurt. It does hurt the book. So it's a 4 out of 5. And like I said, if it had been another artist, or if just Lieber had just done the entire issue by himself, this would have been a 5 out of 5. No question. But yes, art can hurt. So moving on to Punisher Warzone number 4. So basically, we have Rachel Cole Alves has been found guilty. And, you know, we've had, obviously, you know, we've had Spidey, we've had Black Widow, we've had Thor, and now, you know, basically Thor is, is trying, you know, the whole that whole last issue of issue 3 was basically him trying to convince Frank to come back and take responsibility for what Cole Alves has done, or just Alves, if you want to call her that, because that is what she prefers to be called. And, you know, so they are the Avengers. Well, the Avengers that are participating are setting a trap for Frank, in which they intend to use Rachel as bait. They're planning on doing the good old prison transfer switcheroo that we've seen a number of times in other comic books and films and TV. And, of course, Frank smells it coming a mile away. You know, we have, you know, basically, you know, Thor and Cap and Black Widow all ready to, you know, subdue Frank as soon as they pretty much know where he's going to hit. And, of course, he does hit there, but it's not him. Because Frank has broken into Avengers Tower and has absconded with a very specific set of armor that belongs to Tony Stark. Yes, he has made off with the new Mark whatever Iron Man armor. And so, and Spidey is there with Alves, and she is not very happy about the way that she's being used for bait, but it's happening, so let's let it happen. Of course, here comes Iron Man, and Spidey's all, hey, you know, this is, you know, of course, this is not Superior Spider-Man, this is Peter Parker Spider-Man, and he is blasted by Iron Man. And we, of course, know by now that Frank is in that armor. Now, of course, Wolverine's been sidelined because of him warning Frank about what was going to happen. And, you know, this is really, you know, because he would be kind of one of the go-to guys, you would think, of wanting to bring Frank down, because Frank is he's the shoot-to-kill type, but he won't do it against a hero. But he probably would do it against, I mean, he has done it against Wolverine, because he knows that Wolverine has the crazy healing factor and everything like that, so he could withstand a hell of a lot of punishment. And so can Thor, and so can Iron Man, but that's why he gets the drop on Tony while Tony's just working away. What's going on here is that, again, I'm very much of two minds about this particular issue. Is that Greg Rucka, who is a genius, he clearly has the voice of every character in this issue down to almost a science. It's perfect. His characterizations, his dialogue, his plot points, you know, but I think he's uncomfortable with the superhero stuff, because here's my biggest problem with this issue. Again, you know, with the art is also a big problem, because it's just not. It's so, you know, Matt Hollingsworth, the colorist that he is, the great colorist that he is, who also did a great job, who does a great job coloring everything that he works on, but, you know. Also Hawkeye. The biggest problem I have with this book, and this seems like such a nitpicky thing, but it was a real thing for me, and it's logistically. How in the world could Frank Castle get into the Iron Man armor? How is that possible? Because you would think a guy like Tony Stark, he's going to have as many safeguards on the Iron Man armor as possible. It's going to be like Judge Dredd's lawgiver. I mean, you know, if the wrong person pulls the trigger on the fucking thing, it's going to fry or blow up or whatever. I mean, it's, you know, not just anybody can take control of it. And Frank Castle, obviously a strategic genius, but he's not, you know, he's not a superhero guy. He wouldn't know. I mean, he's not a, you know, that's why he always had microchip around, is because he couldn't get into the electronic stuff, because he was the soldier. He was the guy with the boots on the ground. And here he is now flying around in Iron Man's armor to, you know, to rescue Rachel. And to me, it's just, I don't know. I don't know where this book is trying to get to. And with that particular with those particular moments, I mean, if it had just been, if we had just seen, for instance, you know, somehow that he would get Tony to kind of work against his Avengers pals, then we'd have something, I think, a little bit more believable in this sense, which is why we didn't deal with a lot of the superheroic stuff in Rucka's Punisher, or the Punisher tends to kind of stray away from that, unless it's the street-level heroes like Spidey, like Daredevil. So this, to me, was just, that was a big, it just really stuck out to me. And like I said, I know it's nitpicky, but I mean, it's comic books. I mean, they're, you know, I think that Rucka just has a problem working out logistically how this is going to need to go. Because I think, honestly, this is, and Ghost Critic also did mention this as well, I think there are some editorial decisions, and I know that we're all in a rush to kind of blame the editors when a great writer is doing something that we think is kind of dumb. But I do honestly think that there was some editorial pressure to get this book in a very compact series of issues. You know, there's only 5 issues to this. We've got 1 to go, and this just seems like this could have been something that stretched out for 6 or 7 or maybe 8 issues, where we had more involved. But I know that we're pressed for time. This is probably not a big seller, which is the only reason I can honestly assume that the old Punisher series got fried, which, you know, I mean, again, it's just like, I know I didn't make nearly as big of a stink about that as I did about iVampire, but I know that I'll see the Punisher again. I mean, he is making monthly appearances in Thunderbolts right now, however long that'll last, because God knows I'm not into it, but I'm sure there are other people out there who are. So basically, just the whole thing with the Iron Man armor does leave a sour taste in my mouth. But the rest of the issue is so good and written so well, and the devices are framed so neatly, that it does, of course, keep me going, and does allow me to give this a 4 out of 5. So 4 out of 5 for Punisher Warzone number 4. Moving on to the indies. Well, kind of 1.5 indies that I'll be doing here. I'm just going to give a brief rundown of Black Kiss 2, because I hadn't been able to pick it up, and I finally was able to pick it up the last couple issues of it, last trip to the comic book store, and I read issues 5 and 6, and it just is crazy, batshit insane stuff, because, you know, we finally get back to Cass Pollock, the very, very anti-hero of the original Black Kiss series. And we see how he is forced to deal with the reemergence of Beverly and a new Dagmar. and we see how Cass does have to deal with it, and how ultimately he is undone by it over the course of the decades. Because the 5th issue begins, I think, in 1992, and we see Cass, and we see a lot of the old characters like Nunzio and so on and so forth, and we just there's of course a lot of sex going on. There's a lot of fucking in this book, and then in the 6th issue we have Rosemary, who's the kind of the young woman who helped Cass dispatch Beverly and Dagmar the last time around. She is very quickly done away with in this particular issue, and in, of course, a very shocking manner, but appropriate to this book, because this book is a lot about shock and how much Chaykin just wants to get away with here. And basically we see Cass die at the hands of Beverly. But then in the next part, in the final chapter of this book, Cass is still alive, but he was killed, but is just kind of in the undead thrall, if you will, of Beverly. And Beverly, of course, has found herself a new Dagmar, basically another transvestite, or transsexual, excuse me. And, of course, there's all this quote-unquote deviant sex going on, and basically it turns out that the real soulmate to Beverly seems to be Cass. So I know that most of you won't get that, because most of you are not reading this, but again, I mean, the whole series itself has just been... It's been wacko. It's unfortunately nowhere near as much fun or as fucked up or as nearly as linear as the original Black Kiss, which is something I do highly recommend. It's a really, really good book. It's very fucked up. It's nowhere near as kind of, blatantly in your face with fucking all the time, and as, quote unquote pornographic as this book is. But hey, so I give the whole series about a 3 out of 5. It was an entertaining read throughout, but I mean, it's nothing that's going to stay with you, not like the first book did. So, I mean, it was a nice try, and it was nice to see some backstory about Dagmar and about Beverly, but ultimately how we got, and then it kind of coming full circle, and then even beyond into more of the present day. Where we have Cass and Beverly. So I mean, I think that there's some nice moments, but overall, it's just kind of I think it was just kind of a fun experiment for Chaykin to revisit those times of his massive depravity. So Black Kiss 2, nothing I would rush out to buy, but it certainly is an interesting read. Anyway, Angel and Faith, number 18. So this is, has consistently gotten my vote for the only consistently good Buffy, kind of Whedonverse spinoff, Buffyverse spinoff, if you will, comic book. Because season 9 has definitely had its ups and downs, and more or less kind of just an even keel, where it's been like, this is meh, but then it kind of goes murder. It never really gets up to yay category like season 8 did, because season 8 had a lot of different writers, all with their very unique kind of points of view. And you had Drew Goddard, you had Brian K. Vaughan, you had Joss himself, you had Brian Meltzer, some really good talent there. And then here you have mostly Andrew Chambliss. And Drew Greenberg, of course, co-writing the second part of Billy the Vampire Slayer. But anyway, so Angel and Faith, almost consistently, Christos Gage and Rebecca Isaacs. We did have the great Chris Samney on art there for a couple issues, and which were really fun to read, because it's just a joy to see Chris Samney's art, I think, all the time. But but Rebecca Isaacs does a pretty good job herself. Basically, what we've got here is that we have kind of the revelation of how Rupert Giles is, quote unquote, alive again. Is that, you know, a long time ago, as we see in the beginnings of this issue, that he and, you know, his kind of circle of little sorcerer friends, mage friends, whatever you want to call them, sold their souls to Aigon. Which is why he has been resurrected, and how Aigon actually wanted to do this also with Ethan Rayne, but it was too late for him because Ethan Rayne is dead. You know, was killed very, very early on in season 8 of Buffy. But we have, you know, Rupert, and we have Aigon. Basically, we see what his, you know, sort of what his powers extend to as far as what he can do with people, is that anytime anybody becomes unconscious, he can instantly take over their bodies. And the only way to get them out of his thrall is to wake them up, in which we do see Nadira do rather violently with Faith. She just, you know, gives her a nice little flick of the knife, but just, you know, it's a very shallow cut, but just enough to jolt her awake. And so they make, you know, they beat a very hasty retreat. Unfortunately, they do have to leave some of their, you know, Slayer friends behind, or their potential friends behind. And they kind of, you know, they leave to kind of, you know, not only lick their wounds, but also to kind of regroup with Alice Dare, who has been kind of their pseudo watcher for the time being. And basically, here's what we have. We have the huge exposition of Aigon's powers. We have, you know, how he can die, how, you know, basically, you know, that, you know, Angel, other vampires are immune because he can't take over their sleeping bodies. Aigon can't. So, but what he's really looking for are people who are very specifically tied to the magics. And because Giles sold his soul to Aigon all those years ago when he was just a, you know, teenage punker, you know, slightly post-teen punker, we have the key within Aigon himself to get Giles resurrected, so that Angel again can fix the mistakes that he made as Twilight. And because there is a part of his soul tied to Aigon, that is the part that they can get. So because even though he died a quote-unquote natural death, his soul is unnaturally being kept in part by Aigon. So that is where the key to his resurrection lies. So, I mean, that was a really cool reveal. But the problem with this issue is that it is very exposition heavy. This whole book almost is exposition, except for like the first 6 or 7 pages. It's all expository dialogue. It's all monologuing. It's all, here's our plan, here's what we're going to do. And it's just like, let's fucking get on with it here, man. And then the last 2 pages come in and save the fucking day. Because we have a new ally, and it's the only other vampire with a soul, our Blondie Bear. And he has come in, as he even says himself, to save the bloody day. That was worth it to get this, you know, to get to this part where we get to see, we're going to get to see this kind of final confrontation between Angel, Faith, and Aigon, and here's Spike. So, and fighting on the side of the right and the just. So, but of course in his own dickish way. So, I haven't seen Gage write Spike yet, but this is obviously, you know, he definitely seems to have the right tack in which he's introduced him into this issue. Again, if it hadn't been for some of these really cool reveals, like, yes, they can get Giles back, and it can be kind of quote-unquote legitimate in their plans, and also this reveal of, well, you know, or this, you know, not cliffhanger, but just this cool final moment in which we do have Spike coming in to help. That really redeems a lot of this book, because it gets so mired in exposition that it's just like, come on already, I'm going to sleep reading this book. I mean, I don't mind it when a book is dense, but when it's this dense, I've got a problem. But of course, you know, Rebecca Isaac's doing a fantastic job on art. You know, and Gage, I mean, obviously a very talented writer. He's doing his level best to keep this book above water, which is why I think it has these moments in it to kind of, you know, to kind of save itself from itself, you know. You know, a 4 of 5 for Angel and Faith number 18. It definitely has its you know, its peaks and valleys, but the peaks do outweigh the valleys when it comes down to it. So now we're on to DC. So we've got Aquaman number 16. Now, this is a crossover with Throne of Atlantis. I'm not reading Justice League. You know that. I know that. So why am I interested? Well, because I'm interested in Aquaman. I'm enjoying reading this book. And so basically what we've got here is that I think is probably much cooler than what's actually going on in Justice League right now, is that we have Aquaman, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman at the bottom of the ocean. And Batman is, you know, he's kind of encapsulated in this, you know, kind of pressure resistant, life preserving capsule, but it's, you know, it's not something that he was put in voluntarily. It's something that apparently Orm did. Because, of course, this whole thing is about the battle for the Throne of Atlantis. So we have Orm striking out onto Boston. He's going to level the city. He's going to drive it back into the sea. And there they have kind of all these kind of quote-unquote League reservers, like Savage Hawkman, goodbye. Firestorm, hopefully goodbye soon. But Black Canary and I don't know, others who can even tell at this point in time. Vixen is there. Is Vixen even a part of any book right now? I'm kind of unsure on that one. But anyway. And then, you know, here's Aquaman and Batman kind of working together. They seem to be kind of like seem to be like kind of the buddy movie part of the issue here, where they're working together to discover more of kind of the secrets of exactly where they are, why Orm has left them there, and what they plan on doing. And, you know, it all has to do with this trident that nobody's quite sure where it is. Aquaman is totally under the understanding that Orm has it, and he's using it to control the creatures from the trench, which of course we saw in the first arc of this title. And those, you know, crazed, bloodthirsty, just, you know, super killers from beneath the bottom of the sea. And here comes Cyborg and Mira come to save the day. And of course we have Vulko and Dr. Shin back on terra firma. And they seem, you know, they're obviously, you know, we don't know, and you know, they head up to, you know, the trench dwellers, whatever we want to call them. These creatures head up to the surface, and all of a sudden they're starting to attack Orm. And of course, you know, Aquaman is assuming that, hey, these creatures must be under Orm's control, but no, because who's really controlling this is, I'm not going to spoil it. But you know what? I mean, uh, we've got uh, on art. We no longer have Ivan Reis, but we do have Paul Pelterier. I don't know how exactly his name is pronounced. Paul Peltier's very cool kind of Alan Davis-esque art style, which is really nice to see in this book. And you know, I'm glad that I'm not getting Justice League, because this issue is actually cool enough to stand on its own. Again, John's really showing where his real, I think, passion lies. Of course, I think that's probably going to switch relatively shortly once the Vibe comic starts, and when he starts doing Justice League of America, which is coming out whenever. I think it's this week. Matter of fact, I forgot to check the upcoming releases this week. But this book is a 4 out of 5. I mean, it's just it's fun, it's cool, it's got some really cool moments. The art's terrific. It's kind of a rousing story. It has a cool twist, and it just, you know, it's a good issue. What can I tell you? So now on to Flash, number 16. Now here we have, of course, we have Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato doing a really cool kind of the one other book that I would compare this to right now certainly is Batwoman. I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. Because basically in this book we have kind of Flash and Grodd. This is kind of the build-up. Seems to be kind of the penultimate issue to their final kind of confrontation. Because, you know, we have things going crazy all over the place, because we have some views into the past where we see that that Iris and Barry did kind of have a thing for one another at one point in time. But of course, now he's with What's-Her-Face. And he's got to go out and kind of face his, you know, this is kind of, I still feel like this book is kind of hero building. Even though he's, you know, Flash has been doing this for a while, apparently. Sorry, throat's kind of dry. And so, you know, we have stuff going on within the Speed Force. You know, we have Iris and all the kind of motley crew that she's with. You know, we have tanks versus huge woolly mammoths and shit like that. It's just wild. Because here it is. Because like Batwoman, we've got a writer-artist and another writer doing a book that is what we would probably say would be a seamless blend of art, what should be a seamless blend of art and storytelling. But it is more artistic storytelling than a combination of art and kind of your normal comic book storytelling. They seem to be, you know, Manapul and Williams seem to be very much of the same school of thought with their respective series. Flash is definitely a lot lighter and much more superheroic. But I think they're coming from the same place. They want to ultimately kind of make a story that fits with their art. Because Francis Manapul's art is phenomenal. I love, love, love his work. But while this book has some really cool moments, like the Rogues helping to save Central City from the guerrillas, and, you know, with all the stuff in the Speed Force, and, you know, how, you know, Barry's, you know, kind of like the super fast brain whole thing is kind of working for him, and how we see it really start to work in his favor against Grodd. But the book is so short. Like, if you think back to me, the last issue of Batwoman was a lot of characters, and but it just felt incredibly brief because, you know, of course, every page is a 2-page spread. It's not the same here. There are individual pages, but again, once it gets to like the big moments, Maniple really stretches those moments out and makes them seem like it's not like it's just taking up space per se, but like he's just kind of adding more shit. And that is kind of ultimately where I think the book, where I think this issue would normally have been, again, like near to pick of the week, it just kind of, it doesn't quite get there because it is being stretched out to make way for this big confrontation issue. So, like I said, I get where they're coming from, but I just wish it had been longer. So, again, a 4 out of 5 for Flash number 16. It's a good book. It's really nicely done, again, but it's just stretched out too long. I was going to talk a lot about Talon number 4, but I'm not going to. I'm going to scratch that out because I missed issue 3. I forgot to pick it up, and it wasn't in my pull box, but it was, and then I forgot that I hadn't read the 3rd issue because it's an issue that, it's a series that I'm interested in, but not overly interested in it. Because it is Snyder and James Tynion and Guillaume March, and the first 2 issues I thought were really good. Much better than I thought they should be. But basically, because I picked up issue 4 and I'm reading it, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, man? I mean, it's like, it's crazy. You've got all this stuff going on all over the place, all these new characters that I'm being introduced to, because at first it was just like, it was Sebastian and it was Calvin. And it's like, what is going on? I don't remember any of these people. What's going on? So apparently, Calvin and Sebastian have kind of gotten themselves kind of a group of people looking to battle the Court of Owls and kind of really take them to task. So it's like they have, you know, kind of like their own version of the Bat family, if you will. But, you know, some are cops, but they know how to deal with the Talons and so on and so forth. And we have this big issue with all of this stuff going on in it, and I'm totally fucking lost. So I just need to go back and read issue 3, because I can't judge this issue on the merits of just this issue, because it is very much a continuation of what has happened previously, and I don't know what happened. So I need to read it. Sadly, I did not get Justice League Dark this week, because that was not in my pull box either, so I've got to make sure that it's in my pull box this week, so that when I pick it up, so on and so forth. One book I did read, didn't buy, but did read, was because I saw 2 names, and I almost did buy it, but I'm like, I don't really know if I want to spend the extra $2.99 or with my 20% off. So, and no digital download codes for this one either, so, because it's DC. But that is Masters of the Universe, The Origin of He-Man. Why did I get it? Why did I read it? 2 reasons. Josh Fialkoff writing it, Ben Oliver on art. Ben Oliver, who did such a fantastic job on the art for the first arc of Batwing. And just Josh Fialkoff, because it's Josh Fialkoff. Now, I don't know if this is a book that he is going to be writing for DC. If it is, I will absolutely read it. I'm not that into He-Man and all that kind of, you know, Masters of the Universe stuff. But if it continues like this, I will very easily get into it. That's pretty much all I can say, is because you are kind of, you know, at the same time, you have kind of this much grittier origin. Because I did review the Origin of Skeletor issue, if you do remember, however many months back that was. And that was really good. And this issue is really good, because we have Prince Adam. You know, we have a grittier introduction to you know, Prince Adam and his battle with Skeletor. and we have the Power Sword, and we do have the moment, and you know what moment I'm talking about, by the power of Grayskull. And it's like, I've just kind of gone back in time a little bit to the mid-1980s when I watched this fucking cartoon all the time, and I've got the theme song kind of going through my head. Okay. And I see, you know, He-Man and Skeletor, you know, crossing swords and everything like that, and then we have the kind of origin tale here. Now, this is a very, of course, seems like a very abridged origin tale, because there's a lot more to He-Man than just this. But, you know, we do have, you know, the Sorceress coming in. You know, we have Skeletor really seeming like he's got, you know, young Prince Adam at a great disadvantage. You know, him and he of the page boy haircut, although that haircut does seem to be absent, thankfully. But you know what? It's just, it's got such terrific art, and it's got such a cool kind of through line that I ended up actually asking for them to put it in my pull box for next week, because I actually want to own this issue. Because I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, it was that strong. It's a really tight, well done, beautifully drawn issue. I mean, it's terrific stuff. So, like I said, if this is one of the things that Fialkov is going to be working at, you know, working for at DC in the future, after, you know, then it's definitely something that I'm going to want to be picking up now, because he does have 2 kind of mystery projects that he says that he has in the works for DC, but we don't really know what they are yet. But this is an indication of that. I'm on board. So, so like I said, 4.5 out of 5 for Masters of the Universe, Origin of He-Man. I, Vampire, number 16. I was afraid that this book was going to get to this point. This book, again, it's the same problem I have with HAWKEYE number 7 this week, is that there's not 2 or 3, but 4 artists on this book, and they all have wildly dissimilar styles. And we have, of course, the story of Cain and Lilith, which is started out, the art is started out by Scott Clark, who is quite good, very much in keeping with the aesthetic that Andrea Sorrentino has created for this book. Thank God that Marcelo Maiolo has continued to remain colorist on this book, because he's really kind of saving the artist's asses with this in this book right now, because he brings that kind of the dark, muted tones to everything. The grays, the browns, the blacks. It's just, you know, it's very, very muted color style that enhances the, you know, I mean, Scott Clark's work is fantastic on this issue, and I just wish he had been the artist throughout the whole issue, because I don't remember the names of all the other artists, but I did not like their stuff. And that's where the book does go wrong, because we have this great story here where we do, like I said, it opens up with Cain and Lilith being kind of the Adam and Eve of the vampire world. And he's meeting with, you know, Cain himself, he's meeting with, you know, Troughton and Mary and Deborah Dancer. We're trying, you know, and he's trying to make sense, to help them make sense of what's going on with Andrew, but also just kind of telling his own story and how, you know, witnessing the first transformation, when one of their children died for the first time, and their vampiric children, I mean, and she actually changed into a werewolf, or just a big wolf. But we also have, of course, we have Tig, and we have David, and we have Andrew at the Van Helsings in their pocket dimension in their armory. And they are going to acquire this piece that is, again, it could, is looking to level the playing field in Bennett's favor. But we also get another guest popping in here, and that is John Constantine. And basically he's saying, we need Andrew Bennett, we just don't need this Andrew Bennett. Because the world needs Andrew Bennett. And Constantine, of course, never telling more than he needs to. Never letting on any more than he thinks that the other people should know. And, brings kind of his crew of Deborah, Mary, and John to the House of Mystery, whilst Tig and David and Andrew are busy fighting, kind of these golems or whatever the hell they are, these constructs that the Van Helsings put into their pocket dimension, and ultimately doing away with all of them. Tig loses her hand to this whatever. And when the House of Mystery arrives to usher Constantine and his merry band, or decidedly unmerry band, off to see what they can do about saving Andrew, the door is locked. Well, it means only one thing. Somebody else has got the keys. And methinks that he's not going to do something very good with it. I mean, if you think back to Justice League Dark, and you think of that chase between the House of Mystery and the House of Secrets, in that great issue that they had, that great arc that they had with Tim Hunter and the Books of Magic and everything like that, you see how obviously important and how powerful the House of Mystery can be. And in the wrong hands, it can be really bad. We've got, dialogue, character, the story beats, everything, again, is pick of the week material. But we have these horrific inconsistencies in art. And it really throws you as a reader for a very unfortunate loop. And if this book had not been announced recently to be on basically the chopping block for DC, that it wasn't going to get axed soon, this issue would be very much a telltale sign that this book is destined to be canceled. Because once you do the incessant shuffling around of creative teams, or at least artists in this case, because Fialkov, to his credit, has really done a masterful job with this series, as at least I and some of you out there know. And it's a shame to see it kind of getting the shaft like this. DC just seems to kind of determined to almost just say, fuck it. I know that Sorrentino is apparently coming back for the final issue 19, I believe. So that's 3 months away, so we'll have 3 more issues of this fantastic book, and then we'll have, my great sadness at seeing it go, but at least until then, as long as I get to read more adventures of Andrew Bennett and all of his supporting characters unhappy. I just wish that artistically this book, the entire book, had been done by Scott Clark. If that had been the way it went, 5 out of 5, but sadly not. And this is the lowest grade that I've ever given an issue of iVampire, and that's a 4 out of 5. So that brings us to our book of the week, which I promised at least one person that it would be kind of a shocker, and it is. Because I was kind of shocked as well. And that is Batman and Robin Annual #1. This was a book, I was amazed to see that there was anybody who took any points off for this issue, because it is so tremendously fun and great. We've got RDNCF coming in to do art on this annual. Thankfully, they didn't get like kind of a, on some of the other annuals, kind of gotten some sort of hacky feeling artists. But here, they've gotten a really good artist. RDNCF, really cutting his teeth on Batgirl, and now here we have him working with Batman and Robin. And this whole issue is, is kind of touted as being, changing them forever. No, it's not changing them forever. It is another way of Damian and Bruce coming together. And Alfred as well. I mean, we see really here, we're starting to see the real roots of a family. Because basically what happens here, it's a two-pronged approach to what Damian is doing. Is that he wants to give his father something very special. He sends him on a scavenger hunt for moments of his parents' past that are very important to them, and that Damian knows will be important to Bruce. But of course, his ulterior motive is that he's going to stay in town in Gotham City and dress up as Batman. And, so basically Bruce and Alfred are off in Europe doing kind of the scavenger hunty thing, and Alfred has this time to kind of reconnect with an old flame of his and kind of do some Shakespeare, because, of course, Alfred was an actor for a while before he, became the butler. And we get some really, really touching moments for Bruce. The first thing that he finds in a hotel in England is a painting that his mother, that Martha Wayne, painted. But that Bruce, as a child, kind of helped out on. Of course, Bruce has no memory of this at first. But some sorts of memories start to come back through. And then, while we're having these tremendously kind of heartwarming, very kind of emotional moments, we cut back to Gotham City and we see Batman. It's basically the equivalent of, if your father was a fireman, or if your father was a policeman, or if your father was a soldier, or whatever, you kind of dress up as, who your dad is and kind of be that for, a little while. Of course, Damian is actually taking this to a much bigger extreme, is that he's pretending to be Batman. He's always kind of cloaked in darkness. He's trying to fake the voice and everything like that. And of course, he's giving this one poor cop hell as he's going through all this stuff. And, it's just intercut with these moments of Bruce finding these things that Damian has sent him to find. And it just, the whole issue was just all smiles. I just had this silly grin on my face, and it was just like, this issue makes me ridiculously happy. I mean, I feel good. I mean, it's not, because it's not often that a Batman book leaves you feeling happy about anything, you know, especially right now. And of course, this has nothing to do with what's going on with Death of the Family or anything like that. It's just, you know, as, you know, Damian kept, you know, prior to the death of the family thing, because this is when this all takes place, essentially, is when he found one of Martha's pearls and kept it for Bruce. This is just one of those moments where family does bond. And we just have a great time watching Bruce make these discoveries, seeing Damian play at being Batman for a little while. And it's just, Tomasi just does a tremendous job of making this book solid, extremely entertaining, very funny, very fun. I mean, it's one of those books that it's like, I could show this to anybody and say, you know, they still do make comic books for everybody. And because this is a subject that because it's ironic that this came out this week, because before I got my books this week, a friend of mine on Facebook messaged me and said that he'd just gotten a whole bunch of trades for his kids. And, you know, one of them is going on 14, the other two are twins, and they're both 9 years old. And he kind of asked me, because, you know, he sees my vlogs, he sees my status updates and stuff like that on Facebook, and he was kind of saying, well, what other books might you add to this? Because his list was kind of a lot of the, you know, I shouldn't say a lot of, but it means, you know, some of the big basics, like, you know, it's obviously some of the great works of all time. You know, he had Dark Knight Returns, he had Watchmen, he had V for Vendetta, he had Year One, he had first book of Sandman. Okay, break for a moment. Thank you, Matt, Agent 42Q. Thank you for sending me the first trade of Sandman. I saw your Absolute Sandman edition. I'm jealous as hell, because I would love to read this book in its entirety now, because that has really started something for me. And he also sent me a cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trade, which was really fun and really cool. I don't know if we'll be getting into that quite so much, but it is definitely giving me another title to think about. So big shout out there. But just anyway, going back to this, and some other stuff that I thought it would have been okay for kind of the elder of these kids to read, but I certainly would not put a 9-year-old near pretty much any of the books that he talked about. I mean, the only one that seemed to have kind of a, you know, a not too adult theme was Batman Year One, even that stretching it, because there is some language, there is obviously violence, and, you know, some realistic violence, but it is more for adults, because it is, you know, it's a very kind of grown-up style. You know, it's written in a very modern manner. And he was asking me kind of what I would say would be good books for, you know, good trades to, you know, for his kids to read. And, you know, and I'm like, you know, I'm kind of comfortable with, you know, because I read a lot of this stuff when I was, you know, 13 or 14 years old. So, I mean, I'm cool with that. You know, as long as he's okay as a parent doing that, I'm certainly okay with recommending that for his elder child. But for his younger children, I had a very hard time trying to recommend anything that was kind of kid-friendly in this day and age. of comics that wasn't kid books. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, something that, you know, because obviously a lot of us, when we were growing up, I'm 38 years old, you know, Ghost Critic, he's, I think, what, you're 44 now. You know, I have no idea how old some of the rest of you are, but, you know, more often than not, a lot of us started reading comic books when comic books seemed a little bit, and were a little bit more kind of all ages friendly. And there has been such a kind of a radical shift. I mean, I wouldn't recommend a Batman title to any kid right now. I wouldn't recommend just about anything to a kid right now that's coming out currently, because either the themes are rather mature, or they're done in such a style that might turn off a younger reader, or it is just too, it's too mature. I mean, it's like the only books that I could really think of to recommend were books that have been published not too recently, but not too long ago, like I thought of Dave Gibbons' Steve Rude's World's Finest, which is a really terrific book. It's kind of, you know, there's some kind of, you know, iffy stuff, but for the most part, I think it's really fun. It's a really entertaining read. Of course, Steve Rude's art is very cool. And, you know, like, you know, Batman in the 70s, you know, it's kind of dark, but it's kind of cool at the same time. So, I mean, because you get a lot of Neil Adams stuff, you get a lot of Marshall Rogers stuff, you get some early Jim Aparo stuff. So, I mean, it's, you know, there is some stuff out there, but, you know, it's like, and I was thinking of also, and I also did recommend Runaways, because, you know, of all of, like the great writers that are out there right now, that was the one that I thought would be kind of most appropriate for a kid to read, a younger kid, because that's, even though there's some dark stuff that happens, you know, we're still, you know, with some teenagers, and that, you know, kind of lightens the load a little bit. I said that's still kind of questionable for a, you know, kind of a pre-tween, but still good stuff. Anyway, so absolute 5 out of 5 for Batman and Robin Annual #1. Just tremendously entertaining, tremendously well done. I loved it, and just I recommend that those of you who have dropped Batman and Robin maybe give it another chance, because I think that you might continue to dig it. Anyway, that's just about it for this week's New Comics, bitches. Anyway, this is, I don't know if you've seen him before, but this is Daryl Dixon Cat. So yes, that's for all of you Walking Dead fans out there. This is Daryl Dixon Cat. Why is he Daryl Dixon? Because he's a fucking terror. He'll kick your ass. He's got a cute little goatee here. And that's when I saw his goatee, I said, this is Daryl Dixon. So Daryl, say hello to everybody out there in the comic book community. Yes? Okay. So, thank you again for watching. We actually made it under an hour and 30 minutes this week. So, again, thank you for watching. You know, feel free to subscribe up there and comment down there, because as we know, we do like the feedback. What are you doing? Thumb it up, thumb it down, let me know what you think, let me know what you feel, give me all the good words, and let me know what's going on out there. So, again, thank you for watching. This has been The Shadow Gallery. I have been your host, James Donnelly, and I'm here to remind you, and you, to always stay in the shadows.